Hello, I'm Momita Bakshi Chatterjee in conversation with Mr. Rajesh Nambiar, Chairperson of Nasscom and Chairman and Managing Director of Cognizant India. So many thanks for speaking to PTI.
Thank you so much for having me in your show. Really appreciate you take the time to come here, Mamita. Appreciate that.
So let me start off. The first question that I want to ask you is about 2024, new year and new opportunities. What kind of agenda would you be driving from a Nasscom point of view for this year?
Look, I think which is very simple. I think Nasscom continues to strengthen as an industry body. We continue to strengthen the whole position of India as a global technology hub. I mean, that's what it is. And given all the macro headwinds that we find, the volatility that you're seeing in the marketplace, I think it is important for us to continue to strengthen this position as a global technology hub. Then you have enough and more going on with the new technology, emerging technology. How do you make sure that you're increasing or accelerating the adoption of these technology within India, as well as for the Indian companies to sort of operate this globally? And then third would be the talent with everything, again, as I mentioned, whether it is a generative AI and the new technologies, emerging technology which is going to be in the fray. How do you make sure that you have the right talent in place as we move forward? So this would be the priorities for us.
This is the big earnings week, right? The biggest of largest of IT companies in India are going to announce their Q3 results. I wanted to ask you about how you see the overall performance of the industry in Q3. Analysts have talked about how Q3 is likely to be soft and tepid because of the furloughs, or more than usual furloughs, also coming on top of the macro overhang, the geopolitical risks. How do you see, from an industry point of view, the results season panning out?
No, okay, of course, we won't be able to comment very specifically on any specific organization or a company at this point in time. But as you know, 2023 was an year of consolidation. I think people were getting more efficiency, ensuring that you're getting the right set of utilization from the people who you already hired and you're in the company. So that is what was going on in 2023. Look at it more as I'm talking about the calendar year 2023 as more of a year of consolidation. And also a lot of areas where people were pivoting from one to the other. Generative AI is a great point that you mentioned, where we truly kind of figuring out what it means to the companies and for the results. When you look at 2024 and way ahead, you talked about the earnings season. I believe that the macro there is still a lot of concerns around the macro headwinds. The macro uncertainties is also resulting in delayed decision making by our customers around the world. So what this delayed decision making does is that it obviously postpones things to the next quarter and so on and so forth. And then you find that a project which would have taken normally X number of months for fruition would take much longer. You also find that there is a certain delay in the discretionary spending. When we don't see that in the marketplace as much as we saw in the previous years. So that's actually again a bit of a delay. Having said all of that, we are also seeing a lot of green shoots, if you may. Right? There are certain clear pockets for around adoption of some of the new age generative AI projects that has been triggered around several of the companies. You're also finding that the areas such as ER&D, for example, is sort of growing for every company and for our industry. You're looking at BPM as an area which is growing as well. So these are some of the green shoots that we are seeing. Then the whole area of the global capability centers, GCCs, they've been really taken off. And if you look at the last few quarters, I think they've grown tremendously. And we've had 19 of the new GCCs got set up in the last 6 months alone. So I think we are roughly about 1,600 GCCs at this point in time. And I think this is going to grow almost to about 2,500 GCCs by 2030. So I think the growth factor in some of these segments of our business, may not be in all the segments, but certain segments of our business has been phenomenal.
Are you optimistic about the IT spends or IT budgets in 2024? Will we see some sort of a growth in those spends, or is that likely to be flat in 2024 versus 2023?
So, Momita, I think technology is such a strategic imperative for companies around the globe. Not just for the tech companies, but for everybody, for our client base, if you may, for our consumer base, customer base. Now, what happens is that technology used to be an enabler, which means that you used technology to achieve certain things and so on and so forth. But today, when you look at the broad industry base, technology is at the core of everything people do. So it has slowly moved from being an enabler to almost in the center of everybody's business. So there is no choice but to have a higher spend on technology as we move forward. So that's good news, right? So we don't see there's going to be a reduction in the technology budget and so on and so forth. I think that's going to be very, very robust as we move forward. Now, the kind of technology we used in 2 years ago or 5 years ago may be very different from the technology where there's going to be spent on the next few years, right? That's going to be the...
So the nature of the spend is going to change.
Correct.
But the fact that companies will continue to invest in technology is a given, given these challenges and all in the
Absolutely. In
environment.
fact, some of these challenges actually makes you spend a little more. I mean, even if you want to optimize what you already have, even if you want to sort of reduce the level of spend that you might have, you still have the quote unquote the share of wallet for the Indian ecosystem, if you may, for Indian tech companies, is only going to grow because you still need the right set of capabilities to sort of make that optimization happen. So I believe that there is going to be an opportunity for the Indian tech industry. Nasscom, which I represent, will only grow, not necessarily shrink. So that's a good news. But again, as I said, in the near term, you also see some challenges in terms of having a little bit of a discretionary spend going down a little bit here and there. But overall, I think it's going to be a good story.
How long do you think this pain is going to last? The fact that clients are cutting discretionary spends, the project ramp ups are not happening as quickly. There is a slowdown in decision making. All these factors, the negative factors. How long do you expect this to continue? Over how many quarters would these continue?
So we don't have any specificity around any of this, and I wish I had a crystal ball to sort of give you that exact time frame. And then as Nasscom, we don't really give out any specific dates. But I would say that for the next few quarters, you will continue to see this. And then companies, as you know, that we deal with lots of companies in our industry. Some companies who actually can get over this maybe a little faster than the others. So you will find that over the next few quarters, this should sort of shape up into, by the end of the next year, you'll find that a lot more of these will be behind us.
So in FY25, can we expect a recovery the way things are unfolding at this point of time? Are you optimistic that in FY25 there would be some sort of a demand recovery?
I'm always optimistic, as you know, Mamita. Yes. So there is going to be a lot more of this coming up in the next few quarters.
In the near term, you talked about challenges for the industry. I want to ask you, how will this temper the hiring plans? Because Indian IT industry has been, I think, known for the thousands of hirings that take place at any given point of time. But that has sort of scaled down. We did see a little bit of a muted hiring in 2023. What does 2024 look like? Will companies moderate their hiring plans given the challenges in the macro environment today, or the fact that clients are not scaling up as quickly as they would have wanted?
So given that there is the demand environment is a little different from what it was in the past years, what companies are focusing now is about increasing utilization and a little more efficiency around what we already have. There are people who've hired probably more than what they plan for. I mean, they plan for a certain growth, and you hired in conjunction with that particular plan. And now, of course, you didn't have that level of growth, so then you need to make sure that you're optimizing the workforce and so on and so forth. Having said that, there will be some move towards just-in-time hiring as opposed to the kind of hiring that we did in the past, where
campus hirings used
exactly.
to be in advance.
So that is the reality. But having said all of this campus hiring I'm a big believer of campus hirings, and I'll tell you why. This industry is built around, Momita, hiring freshers from the universities, making sure that they go through a certain phase of transformation from the colleges to becoming, true programmers and who can actually do, the IT services job and so on and so forth. So that's how this industry was built, and that's not going to go away. The numbers may be different, and you might find that instead of hiring X, you might end up hiring maybe half X or 3/4 of X and so on and so forth. But the concept of how the industry went out to the campuses, hired people, brought them in, and then we call it bottom of the pyramid, and then sort of make sure that they were growing up. That is the foundation of how this industry works. And that was not going to go to change. I don't think we will go to, get into a situation where everything becomes just a lateral hiring or a just-in-time hiring. Not going to campus is not an option.
So campus hirings is something that will continue. Probably the numbers may need to be relooked at given the overall environment.
When we go through this process of bridging from where we are to some sort of a normality, maybe in about a year or so, you will find that these numbers are going to sort of adjust. Depending on the company, they might go up or down as to what they need to hire for the future. So you will find some of those adjustments happening.
And in the interim, what would it mean in terms of companies honoring the offers that have already been made? Do you expect any delay in onboarding of such employees?
There will always be a delay in onboarding of employees, and that you're already seeing it in the market.
And that is because of the uncertainty in the market.
Also because of the timing, because I think there was a notion when you hire from campus, people who sort of come in a certain frequency so that they can actually fulfill certain demand that companies have in the future. But today, when you see our member companies are seeing that those demands are maybe pushed over. Remember, we talked about how the delayed decision making is actually pushing some of the projects into maybe a future quarters. So instead of having somebody join in the second quarter, then you may want somebody to join in the fourth quarter, and so on and so forth. So this timing is an interesting thing, and that's going to be the reality in how the campus hires are going to be onboarded. However, we as a Nasscom, from Nasscom point of view, we do encourage all our companies to make sure that we honor all the offers that has been out in the market.
We talked about the IT budgets and IT spends. Let's talk about the union budget. As Nasscom, what are your expectations for the industry from the budget? We'll, of course, see a vote on account, but once the new government is in place, we'll see a full budget then. What are the big things on the wish list?
There's always a wish list, and we are actually, as we speak now, we have begun to think through what our real wish list should be for the union budget. But broadly, if you see the IT exports industry, it has not so much of a dependency on the Indian budget, right? So as you know, of course, we do need to make sure that things like SEZ and how we really do some of the taxation, etc., might be relevant for us. But there isn't a big list that we would come up with. I think that we've been very aligned with what the ministry has been able to put together in the budget. So we have not finalized the wish list at this point in time. So we will come up with some of the asks.
Is there any major pain point at this moment which would be required
for the address in the budget? No. I see, as I said before, I think the impact of the budget for our industry, while there are certain areas where it may be a big impact, but broadly, I think we are okay in terms of how we operate.
Tell us about the new digital regulations and how it affects the Indian IT industry. So DPDP has been passed by the parliament, and the rules are going to be framed any day now. As an apex industry body, how does Nasscom look at the regulations in a market like India, where we are seeing millions of new users come in every year, devices in every hand, young audiences, young users, and at the same time the fear of user safety not being looked into, the fear of social media and the guardrails there. How do you see this whole regulation space coming up?
No, it's an extremely challenging task for the government, for any government, and definitely for our government as well. I think the DPDP is a great example of how they collaborated with the industry. And so this was actually, these regulations are in some sense shared responsibility between many parties involved. And I think the ministry was very, very good in terms of working with the industry, in terms of formulating it. It's not that just they come up with one day and say this.
They were consultations.
Multiple consultations, not once, multiple consultations. I was with the union minister recently, and he was assuring that nothing, even from the rules point of view, nothing will be done without consulting the industry. So there's a lot more collaboration today than ever before in terms of consultations, in terms of working with, understanding what the industry really needs. I think DPDP is wonderful in terms of how they've been able to bring together a harmony, if you may, between being flexible in one end and at the same time having the right set of regulations and making sure that you're protected, your citizens are protected. So I think in most of these regulations are taken with, first of all, of course, innovation first in some sense, so that you're leading with not
You're
curtailing
not
innovation,
stifling
not
the
stifling
innovation, right?
innovation, but actually promoting innovation, aiding innovation in some sense, and also protecting individuals who are going to be the users of that, with the prism of making sure that they're actually being not there's not no injustice and no harm is done to the end user and so on. So I think it's very, very good at this point in time, and I believe that the collaboration, the consultations that the ministry has been able to engage in has been very, very fruitful.
Government has also started work in replacing the IT Act, which is, I think 22 years old now, with the new Digital India Act. I wanted to know your thoughts on that, because that would look at AI, that would look at these new and emerging technologies of all of these things will be addressed as part of the DIA.
No, we have always supported such umbrella frameworks rather than having multiple individual acts. I think, for example, instead of having a certain specific AI regulation which is published by the government, I think making sure that they are actually integrated into the broader DIA is actually a very, very good thing, and we support that. I believe that once we have the details of all of that, it's going to be really good for us as an industry, because you do need these regulations for the industry. I mean, this is not something which can be done, by the industry alone. I think, as I mentioned before, it's a good mix of, again, the regulation always has to be very, very participatory in some sense. So our government has a role to play, the industry has a role to play, the citizens have to have a role to play. So I think it'll be good for us to see this in action.
How serious is the threat of deepfakes today? And as an industry body, are there any specific initiatives that you have lined up to look at this whole issue of user safety, deepfake, cyber safety, for instance? And government has also issued advisory to social media companies on this. 2 advisories have been issued in the last 2 months or so.
Correct. Well, look, deepfakes are not new. I mean, they were always been around, and as you know, I mean, they kind of go up or down depending on where it is, what the period is, and I'll tell you my view on and why you would find a lot more deepfakes coming at this point in time. With the generative AI, the reality or the closeness of how deepfakes are seemingly so real is actually much, much more today. So today, when you're looking at it, you don't even know whether it is right a real one or a fake one, because it's so close to being in reality. Because that's what the technologies enabled, to everybody to do this. Now, so the deepfakes are real in some sense. It's a real concern, especially when you look at half of the world's population is going into elections in 2024. So that's a big number. It's not just in India, it's not just the US. There are many, many countries who are going into elections, and deepfakes could be used, both ways in case of elections.
To spread misinformation.
Yeah. So this, fake news, deepfakes, this is all reality. And there are enough counter technology being developed in terms of identifying, etc. Regulations will help in terms of ensuring that we don't any of them. So these are evolving at this point in time. I don't think anybody has found an answer at this stage saying that, okay, we have fixed the problem of deepfakes. We haven't. I think this is something which is evolving at this point in time.
And you're saying that it's not going to go away this year because of the kind of things that are lined up, elections and polls in so many countries.
Yeah. It's actually going to go up. I think the necessity for people to sort of use some of these, or bad actors are always there everywhere, and you will find that unfortunately it's going to go up in terms of the volume of these deepfakes and so on and so forth.
So how should this issue be addressed? The fact that we know that there would be, the scale of it is could be more this year. Should we tackle, is there a need to immediately tackle it through regulations, industry initiatives? How do we go about addressing this big problem?
Again, as I said, I wish there was a silver bullet for this. Today, we don't have a silver bullet for this. This is something which will have to be tackled by, as I said, everybody. The government will have to come up with certain regulations, which is part of the DIA or otherwise. There needs to be a participation from the industry, saying that is there a way to track it down and then make sure that you could put some watermarks and so on and so forth. I think that those are all the things being discussed, but today we don't have a solution which will address all of this.
How do you look at this whole area of AI? Is it a boon? Is it an opportunity? Is it a threat to humanity?
That is the thing. It's a double-edged sword. I believe, honestly, there is so much of goodness which will come out of this AI if we're able to do it the right way. And there is also, I honestly believe that in the short term, AI is being overhyped, which means that, people are talking about, everybody's going to lose their jobs, or things are going to go. You talked about deepfakes. So all the impact which people are perceiving in the near term may be a little bit overhyped, but in the long term, it's actually underhyped. I believe that in
the long term it is?
it is underhyped, meaning
Underhyped, okay. That we are not preparing enough.
So we're not hyping it enough. The impact is going to be a lot more than what we think it is going to be in the long run. So if you take a time frame of 3 to 5 years, you're going to have a much bigger impact of AI than what people are imagining even today. Whereas in the near term, it's 1 year, 2 years. I think you don't have as much of an impact as people are. They are very worried. There are people who are naysayers, people who are concerned, people who are going to say that the doomsday callers and so on and so forth. I think that's maybe a little bit overhyped in the near term.
And do you think AI would cause disruptions, job losses? Because that is one big fear. Spread misinformation, for instance.
The AIs will certainly replace certain level of jobs, but the number of jobs AI will create eventually will far outnumber the number of jobs it takes away. I can give you an example of there are new job roles getting created. You have prompt engineers, which we never had before. We have AI curators, and we have people who are actually doing data analytics for enabling AI and so on and so forth. I think language model creators. So there are many such new roles going to develop over a period of time, and I think there is going to be any technology such as AI. In the past, there are many technologies. There's always a fear that it's going to replace all the jobs, but actually all of them ended up creating more roles than the roles that they've replaced.
Now, I have to ask you this because you're also the chairman managing director of Cognizant India. Two of the top domestic IT firms have accused Cognizant of unethical poaching tactics. What is the update, and how do you see this whole issue of non-compete clause in an industry?
So, first of all, I won't be able to comment anything on the specific issues that you're referring to because of the fact that companies do have certain level of contracts with their employees, whether they are at the senior most levels or the middle levels and junior levels and so on and so forth. So they have employment contracts, and if companies want to go out and implement or enforce those enforce those contracts, that's certainly their prerogative. When you look at these non-compete and non-poaching, in some areas it is as long as the materiality of what the individual was doing in a certain area, all the companies will have a certain level of restrictions in terms of what they can or cannot do, and which company they can join and cannot join. So I leave it at that because it's important for us to know that even we were one of the companies which even at the entry levels, we do not have a bond or a service agreement. We go out and hire from the campuses. Cognizant does not have any service agreement with even the individual, so they can come and join us and leave whenever they want to. So there is.
But some of the companies which they are leaving to come to Cognizant have an issue. So that also indirectly affects you, doesn't it? Because if there are clauses which are being legally enforced now, and also this whole fear, I think that is what it creates, a fear in the mind or a consciousness in the mind of the employee of these clauses which he may not have been so conscious or worried about in the past.
No, they'll have to deal with the companies they work for at this point in time to do that. As I said, it's a free world out there. I think it's important for people to have a little more mobility around, what they need to get done. But having said that, you also have employment contracts with companies, and you're willfully signing that or not signing that, depending on, the choices that you make. So it is, as I said, it's very, very important for the employee and the corresponding company to have an understanding as to how they deal with all of that. I think that there is not going to be a broader industry-wide norm, saying that, okay, you can't hire from each other or any of that, because this industry was built by talent moving from one company to the other. So there should not be any issue in terms of having the right flow, as long as it's done within the broader framework of how the employment contracts work.
Okay, so what are you telling me? Are you telling me it's hiring as usual? Are you telling me it affects you, does not affect you? All of these cases that we're seeing, at least coming from two big IT companies.
It does not affect us at all. None of this has affected us, as in, if you're talking about Cognizant, I don't think there's any impact whatsoever for us. It should not have had any impact on the industry as well.
So it's hiring as usual for Cognizant. Mr. Rajesh Nambiar, it was wonderful speaking to you. Thank you so much for speaking to PTI.
Thank you so much, Momita. It's been a pleasure.